Hello there, Christian. Hello there, Talkin Fight fans. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Olympics special. Let me just start off by, I read an interesting article this morning, courtesy of the courtesy of the state of Florida. They are saying if Tokyo.
I know this one.
Okay, it is good. Despite the logistics of 11,000 athletes, they're saying how they handled the UFC championship, they handled the NBA bubble, blah, blah, blah. So they're more than capable of handling the Olympics if the IOC would consider them. The state of Florida.
I didn't mention this yesterday because I wasn't going to get into that whole thing. But in the article that a lot of our yesterday's information about whether or not we were going to have an Olympics at all, it was mentioned that Thomas Brand, the IOC president, was unlikely to take up the tongue-in-cheek offer of the state of Florida to host the games on their behalf. I think that's a lot of it that offer has to do with the fact that Florida's kind of America's petri dish at the moment. They really haven't cared from day one. When the first lockdowns came in, you saw everybody still just stream down there for spring break, and I think they just left it all down there. So I wouldn't be in too much of a rush to get down there myself. That's just me, though. but moving along a little bit from yesterday, sort of having some technical issues there. There was an announcement about an hour after you and I got off the air yesterday. I guess they had concluded finally their business for the day, and the IOC did make a statement. IOC President Thomas Bach. I keep saying Brand. I'm not sure why. Thomas Bach actually had a few things to say on the matter, so we're going to go over that just now. But the practical upshot is, as it sits right now, we have an Olympic Games. Officially speaking, we have Olympics going forward. So once again, a lot of today's info is going to be coming to us courtesy of the BBC and their reporting on this one. So I'm going to jump right in here. And again, sorry, just having some technical there. There we go. So the International Olympic Committee, is at this point in time, they're saying fully concentrated and committed to the successful and safe delivery of the Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics this year, despite the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this is again according to Thomas Bach, president of the IOC. Now, he went on to say that at this point, all stakeholders, including the Japanese government, were fully united and committed to going ahead with the rearranged games. So, despite most of Japan currently being under a state of emergency because of a third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Olympics are still set to commence as of the 23rd of July, or about 176 days as of filming right now. Bach went on to say that there is no blueprint for trying to reorganize. There is no blueprint for trying to organize this rearranged games during an ongoing pandemic. Which he says has multiplied the complexity of staging these events. He did admit, though, for the first time, that there is the possibility that there may be no crowds at any of the events. And that is significant because that's the first time we're hearing that from the IOC camp. He says, I cannot tell you this. We will do whatever is needed in order to organize a safe games. Dan Rohn from Tokyo 2020 also chimed in on this as well, saying that, uncertainty persists over the Olympics and Paralympics, working on how Tokyo 2020 goes ahead. We are learning every day that this fight against the virus is a tough one, but we're learning to fight this for and like Olympic athletes. Now, this means with a full determination and with a will to win, with hard work every day, and with all the physical and mental strength that we have. So Bach once again has dismissed the idea of any talks of a plan B, of relocating events, or of cancellation. Because we are not speculating on whether the games are taking place. We are working with how the games will take place. When pressed on the matter and asked, at what stage would you consider calling off the Olympics? He continued to toe the line at that point, saying, our task is to organize Olympic Games, not to cancel Olympic Games. This is why we are working day and night to organize safe Olympic Games. Now, this brings us back to the COVID-19 playbook that you and I were discussing a little bit yesterday. And because we're beginning the rollout on that. At this point, Bach has called for patience and understanding, saying that it was in the interests of the athletes, the National Olympic Committees, the Japanese, and as well as the organizers to be diligent, of course, and that the IOC is now issuing the first versions, because this is going to be a living document. As things change, this is going to change, of the playbook for the games. And he said that the athletes and everyone can trust that we are providing the facts of our planned countermeasures as the situation develops. Now, we don't have a copy of that yet, but as soon as I can get my hands on a copy of what that playbook looks like, I'll try to do a breakdown for you guys here so we can get an idea of what challenges we're going to be facing with the Olympics. Bach also added that every possible scenario is being considered and that the IOC is taking safety advice from the Japanese as well as world health bodies, while also talking to vaccine manufacturers. Bach himself, I should add, is a former Olympian himself, being a gold medalist in fencing, and he has been the president of the IOC since about 2013. He's also warning at this point that this constant speculation, such as we have been doing, as to whether or not the Olympics are going to take place, is hurting athletes. I don't know about that myself. Is this a question of they're hurting athletes' chances of securing lucrative endorsement deals? Is it the possibility that companies maybe aren't committing to those sponsorships that they normally would with the games being up in the air? Or is this just a case of the IOC not wanting to admit how bad things are getting, thus jeopardizing their own revenues? I really don't know. Graham, what are your two cents on that?
Those are great questions to have answered by them and only speculate on our behalf.
Well, speculate away then.
If I were an athlete...
Is it hurting that we keep talking about whether or not this is happening? Is it better for the athletes if they're told right now, listen, it's not going forward, and to start focusing on other events that are upcoming, other tournaments, or, should we keep plugging away at this?
If I were an athlete, keeping in mind I'd be an amateur athlete, and keeping in mind I'm not an athlete.
That's what Olympians are, amateur athletes.
If I was an amateur athlete, I'd have no greater goal, quite frankly, than to go to the Olympics and compete in the Olympics. Mm-hmm. So until they're actually canceled, I would continue training and have my goals set squarely on hitting that podium. I can't see any other way around. If I'm an athlete, and that's what I do. I train daily and I practice and I compete in all these other. I'm sure that there are other competitions going on. Well, maybe not, but let's say there are.
Like everything else, a lot of the world competitions and continentals, everything's kind of been put on pause at this point in time.
In that case, I think that my chances of winning would be even better. I don't know. I would look at it quite positively, and I would keep on going until they're actually canceled. What can you do other than move forward? So my mindset would be they're not going to get canceled. I'm going to keep on going until the very. Take a look at I think it was the '84 Olympics. When there was a bit of a boycott going on. And, imagine being in one of those countries that boycotted the Olympics. You trained for 4 years, you had your eyes set on hitting that podium, and all of a sudden your country pulls out. You're not allowed to compete anymore. I mean, that would be devastating. So if I'm an athlete, until I hear they're actually canceled, I'm going full bore. I'm going for it.
Yeah, that would be devastating. I suppose you're right. Do you think that the speculation, though, is hurting athletes? Whether it be from a mental or a financial standpoint.
I have to wonder whether athletes really truly do read. I was going to say read the headlines, let alone stories, or watch their podcast or whatever. I'm not so sure. They're going to sit on the negative. I'm going to say that they're going to focus primarily on their training and their goals of making the Olympic team and going forward to attain the podium. That's what I would think. I'm not sure they'd sit there and doom and gloom every scenario as to how it's not going to happen, but in fact focus on the fact it will happen.
Well, I hope you're right. And I hope that everyone out there is still training, and that those people who are training are actually still going to get a chance to move forward. Because we talked a little bit yesterday about again things like access to vaccines in some countries that are going to have slower rollouts than others. For example, Japan hasn't even started their rollout yet. They're starting their vaccine rollout next month. Whereas we've got other countries that are already well into their rollouts.
Not that this is funny, but in that same article I was reading on the state of Florida, the fellow who was being quoted, his comment was, as opposed to other states, our vaccine does not sit on the shelf wrapped in red tape. So, I mean, I don't know what would prevent countries from vaccinating their Olympic athletes. Sure, they're not first responders, but on the other hand, I would think that all first responders by now, in most have to have been vaccinated. And
well, again, some countries are still trying to get their hands on the vaccine.
I haven't read that it's been limited in any way. Have you?
As a matter of fact, it has in a number of places, as well as in the States itself. Florida being actually a really weird example of that, based on the fact that up until very recently, there was a bit of a COVID tourism beginning to happen in Florida, because they were saying for seniors, if you were over 65, you were able to get the vaccine. And nothing in their language, when they were putting their own regulations out, said that you actually had to be from Florida. So people were traveling from all over the U.S. and some from Canada who could get over the border were traveling to Florida specifically to kind of jump the line and get their hands on a vaccine. Now, I think they've changed that rule as of, I think it was last week, saying that as of now, you actually have to show that you do own or rent or are a Florida resident, at least I should say, before you're given access. But they have been welcoming a lot of people to the state, as part of a vaccine tourism kind of industry. So they're always looking for different ways to get people in.
I'm pretty sure
that about Florida.
Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure though that there are more than enough production facilities who are capable of producing the quantities of vaccines needed around the world. I think the issue might be the actual people required to vaccinate the people.
Well, again, like everything else, rollouts are happening different places differently. Like there's already a big row happening right now in Europe versus the UK post-Brexit, where they're having shortages on doses in the EU. And they're saying that they're demanding doses that are being manufactured in the UK be sent to the EU now, under agreements that existed before Brexit took place. So there's already a lot of red tape, even for the doses that are being manufactured out there. But it's worth noting, and it was mentioned yesterday briefly in this as well, that both the head of the IOC and the IPC, the Paralympic Committee, are stating that they're giving direction that under no circumstances should athletes be given preferential treatment when it comes to receiving the COVID-19 vaccinations, and that preference should be given wherever you are in the world to first responders and to people in high-risk groups. So the IOC, and I'm sure that'll be one of the things that'll be covered in the playbook, which once again, as soon as we have our hands on something like that, I'm going to be going through to hopefully bring you guys more information on what an Olympics under coronavirus looks like. And hopefully we'll get some more direction at that point. But right now, they're definitely saying that they don't want to see athletes getting preferential treatment, because that's just going to turn into scandals, be it regional or international kind of thing, where you've got high-risk groups not receiving a vaccine so that you could have a potential gold medalist fly around the world and fingers crossed, come out on top.
I'm going to hazard a guess here and go out on a limb, quite frankly, and say, if I'm considered in that pool of human beings that someone is calling high risk, in other words, I'm old age.
Age, pre-existing conditions, things like that, autoimmune deficiencies, there's a number of things that can land you in that. It's not necessarily age. Okay,
let's put it this way. If I'm on death's door and I still have my wits about me, I'm going to say, give it to the young people, give it to the kids. I've had a good life. Let those youngsters have it. Let them go compete. Don't you government officials start saying, I'm in a high risk category, therefore I need it first. Hell, no. Give it to the young guys. Go compete.
Actually, that's interesting that you say that, and that was actually something, especially since this is Tokyo we're talking about right now, because that very much is a mindset that you do see in Japanese culture. In the wake of the Fukushima nuclear disaster a few years back now, there were huge groups of what we would now consider to be high risk for COVID individuals, groups of elderly citizens who were volunteering to get involved in the cleanup. Basically saying that this is dangerous work and that you do run the risk of coming into contact with radioactive materials, which could radiation poisoning or any slew of other health issues that can come as a result of that. And when asked why these people were volunteering, that was exactly what they said. They said, we've had a long life. This is our responsibility. We've been here a long time. We're cleaning this up for future generations so that they'll be able to, to live, work, and enjoy life in this country. So it's interesting that you should say that, because that was exactly what happened just after the Fukushima incident. Again, if I'm mispronouncing that, apologies.
Sounded right to me. Well, I get that argument completely, and I don't like to see government speaking on behalf of, shall we say, high-risk populations.
Well, that was the IOC. That wasn't the government in that particular one, in that particular case.
All right. Let me rephrase that. Governing bodies.
Fair enough.
Anyway, wow. So lots to talk about still. Let's go forward, though, and continue our series based on the fact that, like all athletes have to base their facts, it is going forward. The Olympics are going forward, so let's continue our series with that in mind.
Yeah, so tomorrow what I want to chat about is I found a great article talking a little bit about how Olympic athletes, how do they get paid, and where are they paying the rent for starters, and where are they making their money after the fact or during the Olympics. So we'll be taking a look a little bit tomorrow at the American example as one of the more developed international sport communities kind of thing. And I want to take a look at how athletes are, again, talking about endorsement deals versus sponsorships versus performance incentives from things like, the American Olympic Committee versus outside sources as well. So we've got a bit to talk about tomorrow on that. Still at this point, looking at the economics of the games and how we get how much it costs to get from the couch to that gold medal bout. So I'm looking forward to getting back to, now that we know that the games are going forward, at this point, I'm looking forward to getting back to some of our regularly scheduled topics.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Cool.
Like, share, subscribe.
That's all I've got for today, guys. As always, though, if you have something that you do want to see us cover, whether it's about Olympics or anything else, please do, leave a note down in the comments there, and we'll do our best to find that and to get our research in.
All right. Thanks very much, Christian. We'll see you tomorrow.
Talk to you tomorrow.